Hello there. We're glad you're here today. If you're watching online, we're really happy that you're here. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you so much for your love for us. I thank you for each person who's here. Pray, Lord, for those who may be traveling in, that you keep them safe on the roads. For those who are joining us online, that you would bless them as well. And so, Lord, we just give you this time. We're glad you're here today. If you're watching online, we're really happy that you're here. Sorry about that. Let me pray for us. I don't know, I get this thing off. Sorry about that. So, pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, I never had the sound on this turned on. So, if you're watching that, it got crazy. I never had that turned on, but apparently I did this time. No idea how that got turned on. But anyway, okay. So, we are looking at 1 Kings today as we are burning our way through. This is our 11th. We did 2 Samuel last week. It was so meaningful. Right. It was so meaningful to Eric that he completely forgot about it. So, and yeah, remember that if we could stop it like in chapter 11 or something like that, life was good. The same thing is true here. If we could stop it in chapter 10, we'd stop it in chapter 8, we've been fine. But or chapter 10, I guess. But anyway, let me, 1 Kings is in the Hebrew Bible. Remember, it's Samuel, Kings are together. And then they would be part of in the Hebrew Bible, they'd be part of the former prophets. In the English Bible, we consider them part of history, so of history and poetry section. And we have 22 chapters. It's number 11. 1 Kings is how do I put this? First Kings serves as the Jaws music for what's going to happen from here on out. So so I actually read something here. I can't figure out anybody ever gets would ever get attacked by the shark, because don't you hear the music before the shark comes? And so if you start hearing the music, the da-dum, bottom, you're in trouble. But if you don't hear that music, you should be fine. And so a lot of the problems that came about because of David's behavior in 2 Samuel is going to come to light, or come to fruition, if you will, in 1 Kings, and then it's just going to go off the rails in 2 Kings. And so, as we start, we look at, so they actually have it broken down into 4 sections, and I like that. So again, if you're watching online, we will have this on the back table along with 2 Samuel will be on there as well. And if you want any of the older ones, let me know. You can go on the website, fccefree.com. That is fccefree.com. If you send a message from the website there, I can send one out to you if you'd like it. But 1 Kings begins with the death of David, and then it is going to work its way through up to Ahab in Israel. So we're going to see how the kingdom is divided, and it ends with the ministry of Elijah. And so we start out in 1 Kings chapter 1. David is old, and can I get somebody to read? How about 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, just to kind of set the depressing stage.
Now King David was old, advanced in age, and they covered him with clothes, but he could not keep warm. So his servants said to him, "Let them seek a young virgin for my lord the king, and let her attend the king and become his nurse, and let her lie in your bosom, so that my lord the king may keep warm." So they searched for a beautiful girl throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And the girl was very beautiful, and she became the king's nurse and served him, but the king did not cohabit with her.
Okay, so yes, no, David is getting old. And of course, when you get old, you get cold. And so he was frozen. His nose was frozen, his tail was frozen. What's that? And so they decide that, hey, the best way to keep the king warm is by having somebody come and give some body warmth. And of course, if you're going to do that, it's got to be beautiful. And so they get Abishag out there, and her sole purpose here is to take care of the king. It's basically just to keep him warm. And so this is not a sexual thing. It was never intended to be. This was just a very purely practical thing. They didn't have electric blankets back then. That they probably didn't have any. They would have had no concept of the down quilt kind of thing. I mean, if God's working through Sven and Ollie and the Finns and the Norse people, they would not have this problem. But because they would have learned how to deal with the cold a long time ago. But we're looking at a desert region, and so. But the point is that David is getting old. David is old and he's feeble. So that's what we want us to see here, is the fact that this is not the warrior king that we saw in 2 Samuel, or the young, robust guy that took on Goliath and that was running away from Saul. And so now we're going to have, this should not surprise us, we're going to have succession problems. That the king is getting old, and so one of his sons, Adonijah, decides, hey, you know what, Dad's getting old. Now would be a great time for me to make a play for the throne. And so, because remember, there's apparently, at this time, David has not made it known who the successor was going to be. And so he's going to do that in what, chapter 2, chapter 3? Toward the end of chapter 1, I guess, yes. Anyway, so what happens is Adonijah, he sets himself up as king. In verse 5 it says, we're in 1 Kings 1, "Now Adonijah the son of Haggith exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. His father had never at any time displeased him by asking, why have you done thus and so? So, what is our problem with Adonijah?
He's a spoiled brat.
He's a spoiled brat, yes. He has never been told no. I have said this many, many times. If you're watching online, I believe this. What the world needs is more mean parents. And so he has never been told no. And you work in the schools.
I say no.
And how many students do you have that you know have never been told no?
Most.
Yes, exactly. And it's one of those things that there's sometimes I want to get these parents, especially when I was a youth pastor, and that I want you to repeat after me. No. And so that has been the case. Adonijah has never, I love the way the ESV puts it, that his father has never displeased him. So basically, he throws a tantrum and he gets what he wants. And so it's natural, since he's never been told no, that now he wants to be king. And so he was a handsome man. He was the next born after Absalom, who is no longer with us. And so he feels as though he is the heir to the throne. He's the eldest at this point of who's alive, or he's next after Absalom. So he decides that he is going to be king. And notice what he does. He confers with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, somebody other, and Abiathar, the priest. Now, what do we know about Abiathar? We talked about him in church on Sunday.
Abiathar used to be on the other side.
Well, he was on Saul's side, and then he came along. Well, actually, he wasn't necessarily on Saul's side. He was a priest at Nob, right? So he was the one priest at Nob who escaped and went to David. He joined forces with David. But at this point in time, now he's joining forces with Joab and with Adonijah. And that's going to be his downfall a little bit later. But Zadok the priest and Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, and Nathan the prophet and Shammai and Ray, and David's mighty men were not with Adonijah. So this is a problem. Okay, now what do we know about Nathan the prophet? What do we know about Nathan?
Oh, he never tells David what he wants to hear.
Yeah, Nathan's the boss, man. He's one of those guys that kind of like, Elisha, who's like, hey, yo, king, I can't stand you. If it wasn't for this guy over here, I wouldn't even mess with you. Yeah, he has no problem telling people they don't want to hear. So, but the thing is, he's also a man of unquestioned integrity. And so when you don't have, so here's the problem. Adonijah has Joab, and as you all know, I am not a Joab fan at all. I think that Joab is a snake. That he's got a priest that's been with David for a long time, and all that. But he doesn't have the mighty men. So he doesn't have the people who are those who are closest to David are not on Adonijah's side. Now, why do you think Joab might have been on Adonijah's side? Just for what we know of Joab.
Because he's sneaky.
Yes, he's a snake. What's that?
Gain his influence.
Well, I think that he thinks he can gain influence. I think that he actually thinks that he can get something over on this because Joab is all about some Joab. Yes.
Well, Joab's clearly shown that he also is in tune with doing things the world's way. And the world's way is the oldest son is the one that succeeds.
Absolutely. And the one who is the most, who is willing to take up the mantle. And Adonijah is clearly willing to take up the mantle. Now, here we have a problem is Nathan finds out about this. So Nathan runs to Bathsheba, who's the mother of Solomon, and asks her, hey, have you heard about what's going on here? That because, obviously Bathsheba wants Solomon to be king. And so Adonijah would be Solomon's half-brother. And so just another shining example of how well things work when you've got more than one wife. That you got... Yeah, you got all kinds of, we're not even talking stepchildren here. We're talking half-brothers, whatever. We're talking, so when things get nasty here, is that, that we know that Bathsheba has taken over from Michal to be David's favorite wife. So she has a lot of influence over him. Yes.
She's running the household.
She is, yeah. And so, but she's also tight with Nathan, and she's apparently the mighty men are okay with her too.
Anna, I'm probably forgetting, but how did that start? That relationship between her and Nathan? Was it just something?
With her and Nathan, I have no idea.
Okay.
I know how it started with her and David.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out the dynamics of how Nathan,
Yeah, that we don't know.
Okay.
Just that I think part of it with Nathan is the fact that remember that, how do I say this nicely? When you pass on a system without passing on a passion, you end up with problems. And so I think it's reasonable to say that David passed on a system with most of his children. Actually, I'd argue he passed on a system with all of his children, and God actually intervened with Solomon for a short period of time. But for the most part, that they did not share their father's relationship with God. So you were going to say something?
Well, the next part of the text suggests that David has said something to somebody.
Yes.
If not to just Bathsheba, maybe to the inner circle.
Yeah, and I think that so they actually hatch up a plan. So in verse 15, Bathsheba went to the king in his chamber. Now the king was very old. We've already been through that, right? Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king, and the king said, "What do you desire?" She said to him, "My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God," I love this, "by the Lord your God, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. And now behold, Adonijah is king, although you, my lord, the king, did not know it." So we have some very, very cleverly worded things going on out here. So Bathsheba is reminding David. So somewhere there's on Pillow Talk or whatever that David lets Bathsheba know that Solomon is going to be king after him. Problem is he didn't tell everybody else. And then so she goes out and says that Adonijah has set himself up to be king, and you don't know anything about it, David. What are you gonna do about it? Can you hear the challenge there? And so what are they supposed to do? Well, there's just, can I get somebody to read verses 22 through 27?
While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in, and they told the king, "Here is Nathan the prophet." And when he came in before the king, he bowed before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, "My lord the king, you have said, Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. For he has gone down this day, and has sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and the Abiathar the priest. And behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and saying, Long live King Adonijah! But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaniah, and the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he has not invited. Has this thing been brought about by my lord the king, and have you not told your servants who sit on the throne of the Lord the king after him?"
Okay, we'll stop there for a sec. So Nathan's coming up there and saying, "Hey,
Did you endorse this?
yes," knowing that he didn't. Okay. Well, but it's also out there too. So what's happening here is this: is that Adonijah is actually, this is a coup.
Yeah.
That he is setting himself up. Now, the thing is, okay, what did David do the first time he had a coup with his son?
He ran away.
Yeah. So the thing is, so from Adonijah's perspective, okay, I mean, first from the worldly perspective, okay, I can't blame the dude.
Dad's not going to do anything.
That's the idea. Is that what's he going to do to me? After all I've done for you, what are you going to do? You going to call the cops on me? No. And so, and so Adonijah knows that, because David this is as much as a credible a warrior he is, as he is when it comes to his family. The man's a wuss. Yeah.
I think Adonijah's also doing some calculation, saying, Dad didn't do anything about Absalom when he was in his prime.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's he going to do now?
Absolutely.
He can't stop me. He's old, feeble, and so on. This is a shoo-in.
Yeah. So they get to David in time. And so time is of the essence here. So at the end of chapter 1, we have, can I get somebody to read 28 to, gosh, how far are we going to go? Let's go to, let's go ahead and read the end of the chapter. We're not going to read every chapter. We don't have the time, but we will on chapter 1, just to kind of set the stage here. I got somebody to read 28 to the end of the chapter.
King David answered and said, Call Bathsheba to me. So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king took an oath and said, As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from every distress, just as I swore to you by the Lord God of Israel, saying, Assuredly Solomon your son shall be king after me. He shall sit on my throne in my place. So I certainly will do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the earth and paid homage to the king and said, Let my lord King David live forever.
We'll stop there. Okay, so because we'll walk it through, because I'm looking at time here. So we've still got another like 20 chapters to go through. Anyway, so basically David's saying, okay, Bathsheba, we're going to put Solomon on the throne. So he gets Solomon out there. He's anointed king. He got Nathan the prophets out there, Benaniah, they're all out there. All the people went up to him. They're playing pipes, rejoicing with great joy, and that. So he's riding on David's own mule. That I mean, this is basically so he's in David's what are the Suburbans that they drive and all that today. So he's in that one. Okay, he's riding an Air Force One and Mule One or something. I don't know. And so he's out there riding on that. So and he has David's crown on. They're all out there and they are proclaiming him. Now when this happens, Adonijah is having a wardrobe malfunction. He and all the people with him, because they're like, what do you normally have happen when you have somebody who is trying to usurp the throne? What normally happens if you get caught?
You get killed.
you die. Okay, so that's what they're all expecting. That's not what happens yet. So it says, I love this in verse 49. And then all the guests of Adonijah trembled and rose, and each went his own way. And Adonijah feared Solomon. So when he rose, he took hold of the horns of the altar. It was told Solomon, behold, Adonijah fears King Solomon, for behold, he has laid hold of the horns of the altar, saying, let the King Solomon swear to me first that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. So Solomon said, if he will show himself worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar. So basically, Solomon says, Adonijah, if you play nice in the sandbox, you're going to live. Okay? If you decide that you're going to do something stupid, then I'm going to repay you with that, and you'll pay some stupid tax. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So Solomon is made king. Now, David does not give Solomon a lot of advice, but he does ask a couple things from him. One of them is, kill Joab. Okay, so David has, Joab was the one, he took out Abner, who was a more righteous guy. Joab was the one who kept wanting to bring the kingdom of the world back in. Joab was the one that killed Absalom. And David could not take Joab out because of the politics involved. He was in charge of the army and so on. So David's not going to take him out, and so he tells Solomon, kill Joab for me. Yes, that way he's not the one doing it. And so he does. So, and then David dies. David dies in the end of chapter 2, verses 10 through 12. So, Solomon is king. Joab's going down. David dies, and Adonijah shows us that he is not the sharpest tool in the box. So Adonijah comes to Bathsheba and says, I got something I'd like you to do for me. Says, you know the kingdom was mine, and I love this. The kingdom was mine. All Israel expected me to reign. However, the kingdom has turned about and become our brothers, for it was his from the Lord. So yeah, it was mine by right, but God gave it to Solomon. Okay, and this is what he's saying. Okay, it's the fact that God's not there. And so, please ask the king Solomon, he will not refuse you to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. And Bathsheba said, very well, I will speak to the king. Basically, Bathsheba said, you're signing your own death warrant. I have no problem going to the king. So Adonijah wants Abishag. Why does Adonijah want Abishag?
She belonged to King David.
Yes. And so he wants to cause some problems at court by him coming in. Basically he's trying an end around for the kingdom. So yes.
This is very much like what Absalom did, taking his father's wives up on a rooftop and getting to know them in public.
Absolutely. No difference whatsoever. And so Solomon sees that, and Solomon says, dude. You got that, right? Dude. So, I told you, if you kept your nose clean, if you didn't get stupid, you'd be fine. But no, now you got to go out there, and now you got to show me up in front of everybody by taking, David's, his cuddle money, what we could come up with, I don't know, hot water bottle, I don't know, that, whatever it is that she is to him, that, and basically by somebody who was that close to the king, then you're basically saying that we are equals. Okay, and equals end up coming in. So Solomon has him taken out, and he's gone. So he is he is no more. And it's Abishag's own fault. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not Abishag. It is Adonijah's own fault. But again, remember, the reason why Adonijah does this, I am absolutely convinced of this, is because his father never told him no, and because he's a spoiled brat, and he's used to getting whatever he wants. And so from his perspective, What he wants, of course, is the right thing. And anybody else, so Solomon is being dramatic. He's being selfish. He's tearing the family apart by not giving Adonijah whatever he wanted. And so Solomon says, no, I'm not playing that game. So gave you an opportunity. You didn't take it, so you're gone. Solomon comes in to power. And of course, we all know this in chapter 3, that God appears to Solomon and says, whatever you want, I'm going to give you. And what does Solomon ask for? He wants wisdom. And what was God's response?
Because you asked for that.
I'm going to give you wisdom and everything else.
Because you didn't ask for long life, because you didn't ask for money, you asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you all of that. What can we learn from that?
Obedience brings blessing.
Who knew, right? Who knew? And that there's more important things than a healthy bank account and everything else. The best thing to do is wisdom is better than anything else. Because the thing is, okay, from a practical side, if you got wisdom, you're going to end up with at least a lot of money. Yes.
Well, and Solomon doesn't just couch it that way. He says, your people
Yes.
need...
Yes, I want to leave
In
people.
order to properly rule your people, I need something I don't have that only you have.
Correct.
So he does show himself to be trying to rule under Yahweh like Dad did.
Yes, and he's also understanding the fact that Dad did not have wisdom. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, Solomon wasn't dumb even before he got the wisdom. That he still understood the fact that if you're following David, you better be pretty good. And so he's asking for something that he knew his father didn't have. I think Solomon is looking back on his dad's reign and finding out, okay, because David was not always as wise as he should have been. He wasn't as wise with his children. There was many things that he wasn't wise about. That, of course, Solomon wouldn't have been here if he was wise, because if David was wise, he wouldn't have been seen his mother up on the roof. But the point is that Solomon knew that, hey, I need to have something that my father didn't have, and that's wisdom. And so, because I need to be able to rule your people well. And so God gives him that, and then, of course, we have the different issues where instances where he shows himself. We know about the cut the baby and all that stuff, and so Solomon begins to get the rumors of his wisdom and that are being spread throughout the entire known world, and now he's getting all kinds of money and all kinds of stuff, and Solomon is getting rich. And he's getting richer. Rich. No, Solomon is kind of like Henry Ford. Now that you have all this money, what would you possibly want? And Henry Ford has reportedly said, I want more. And that, because if less is more, just think of how much more would be, right? That was Solomon. So in chapter 4, we see him getting all kinds of stuff. We also see him getting influence. And the thing about Solomon is not a warrior. So Solomon is gaining ground, he's gaining land, he's gaining influence, and he's doing this not through conquest, but he's doing this because he's actually reigning wisely. And at the beginning of his reign, that's exactly what he does. Yes?
We've got the Jaws music before he asked for the wisdom.
Yeah, we have some issues here. That he is the first mistake that Solomon makes many mistakes. He makes them with the women, of course, is that he goes to Egypt to get a wife. Now, is any king in Israel supposed to go to Egypt for anything? No, he's not. Now, I believe that the Egyptian wife, this is his first wife. In God's eyes, it's his only wife. And this is the woman that he wrote the Song of Solomon for. And this is actually the story. The Song of Solomon is actually the story of the gospel. It's actually the story of Jesus, with just, I don't know, ancient Near Eastern, porn, but dirty talk, I guess is the word. And so I have no idea how I'm going to teach that class. That so he starts on Solomon is going to start on his road to debauchery, of getting a bunch of women, and so what we see here is that Solomon has wisdom, but that wisdom has a limit, because remember, Solomon does not have the Holy Spirit living inside of him and all that. So you have the wisdom that God gives and the supernatural wisdom that he has, but it's in unredeemed flesh. That's a problem. And that's exactly what Solomon does, is we see what happens when you're given all the stuff in unredeemed flesh. And so it makes those of us on this side of Pentecost should be super happy. Yes?
Yeah, he seems completely incapable of applying all this wisdom to himself.
Yes, and that's, we get to Ecclesiastes. If you get a chance, I think we still have the Eric's teaching on that if you're watching online. Highly recommend go back if you're here. If you were not here for that, it's fantastic teaching. I think it's still in the archives on the website. But if it's not, I'll see if I can find it, because it really is good stuff. Because that's exactly what we see. We're seeing the fact that he didn't apply it. So, but along with this is that, remember, Solomon was the one that God said that is going to be able to build the temple, because David was not able to. Although David was able to buy the piece of property that the temple was going to be on. And remember, the guy was going to give it to him for free, and David says, I will not give it in the Lord, that cost me nothing. And so David buys the property for it, but Solomon is the one that's going to build it. And so we see that he starts preparation for the temple. He's building the temple in chapter 6. And then I love the fact that Solomon does something that's really interesting. Solomon builds the temple, starts to build the temple, then he builds his palace. And that's actually not a bad thing to do. That it took 7 years to build the temple. The temple was the most beautifully ornate slaughterhouse in the history of humanity. That it's got gold all over it. It's a gold-plated slaughterhouse. That's what it is. And Solomon's temple was, at one time, it was considered one of the wonders of the ancient world. Until you can't talk about God, then it got, I'm not sure who beat it out, but it was with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and that. It was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Now, I would argue that what made Solomon's temple so great is not the fact that it was full of, that it had gold all over it and everything else. Is that when the ark came in, and we'll look at that when we get to Chronicles, it actually talks about it more, but when they finished the temple and the ark came in, what you had is you had the Shekinah, you had the glory of God that came on the temple. And so it actually made, historians say that the temple used to glow. Because what we know about the presence of God is that it's light. That we saw that in Exodus. We see it elsewhere, but there's like this burning fire, this whatever. And so this glory that was around the temple, it was the glory of God fell on the temple when the ark came in. And that's what made it so amazing. It's a slaughterhouse that has the glory of God surrounding it. Now, when Solomon is blessing the temple and he is dedicating this temple back to God, this is the place where when the ark goes in, this is the place where the visible presence of God and the concentrated presence of God is going to be. God is everywhere. He is transcendent, outside of creation, and he's immanent. He fills everything inside of creation. But that God had determined that in the most holy place where the ark was, between the cherubim, that was going to be the concentrated presence of God. And then you have the glory of God all around it. And God tells Solomon something. It's something that we know from Chronicles, and I'll quote that, but it's actually in here in chapter 9 here, that if my peace, but basically it says, Solomon, here's this temple that we made. Solomon is saying, God, this is back to you, Yahweh. And Yahweh comes to him and says, Solomon, this is what I'm going to tell you. If you all serve me if you obey me, I'm going to bless you. He basically goes back over Deuteronomy. I'm going to bless you completely. If you do not obey me, there are going to be problems. And that's basically, there's going to be consequences for your actions. That's in chapter 9. However, he also tells us that if we can, this is the Old Testament version of if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, is when he says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. Folks, that is not something that we can give and we can apply to the United States of America. It's not something that we can apply to any human government, unless, of course, it's a theocracy, which is what Israel was. Because the point was this: if my people who are called by my name, you could say that to the church, and I think that that would be a reasonable thing out here. If the church is called by his name, if we will humble ourselves and pray, seek his face, turn from our wicked ways, then he will hear from heaven, and he will hear our prayers and that. But he is telling Solomon, and he's telling the people, this house is not a rabbit's foot. We've already been through that with the ark in 1 Samuel. Okay? And we're going to go through it again in 587 BC when Nebuchadnezzar comes in and people hid in the temple thinking that God would never allow the temple to be destroyed. And it was. And they did it again in 64 to 70 AD when Titus came in, took it out. They did it again in 154 AD or 155, somewhere around there, when it was finally leveled. Because the temple is a slaughterhouse. It is not a rabbit's foot. And he says, Solomon, it's all about the relationship that you have, and it's your responsibility, and it's your children's responsibility as the leaders of this country to keep people serving me. If you don't, I'm going to bring people in. And ultimately what's going to happen, if you do this, I'm going to kick you out of the land. God is very upfront with them. And that's why at the end, right before Nebuchadnezzar came in, the Bible tells us that the Shekinah, or the glory of God, left the temple. And people were just crying. And then when they rebuilt it, people were crying because you know what they saw? It was a slaughterhouse. You take away the glory of God, it's just an ugly slaughterhouse. And then Herod the Great attempted to manufacture the glory of God with Herod's temple, which was the most impressive. It was much more impressive than Solomon's was. But it was all manufactured. Because again, what made Solomon's great was God was there. So that is Solomon. He is being made known. He's getting tons of wealth. Now, when he was building the temple, and he was building his palace, how should we say this? He gave people the opportunity to do the right thing by serving. So he conscripted people. He drafted people in to come and work for him. Just what God told the people through Samuel was going to happen. Samuel did it. He was going to raise their taxes because when we all share the wealth, everybody's happier, and that means that you give it to him. And so he made them pay for it. He accumulated horses and all this kind of wealth and so on the backs of the people. So Solomon did everything that God warned the people was going to happen if they forced God into giving them a king. Yes?
But Solomon also did all the things God told the king not to do by accumulating horses and accumulating wives and making treaties. And
yes. And which just brings us to chapter 11. Ultimately, Solomon turns away from the Lord. Can I get somebody to read chapter 11, verses 1 through 8?
Now King Solomon loved many foreign women along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the sons of Israel, you shall not associate with them, neither shall they associate with you, for they will surely turn your heart away after their gods. Solomon held fast to these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For it came about when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of his father David had been. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites, and Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not follow the Lord fully, as David his father had done. Then Solomon built a high place for Shemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, on the mountain which is to the east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. Thus he did for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods.
Okay, catch that. They sacrificed to their gods. Now, I'm going to thank Eric for this because I never thought about this before and I wish I never did. But so thank you on this one. Is that Solomon had how many wives? How many concubines?
300.
Okay, he's got 1,000 women. Okay. Now we know from Ecclesiastes that Solomon was all about the wine, women, and songs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That he was all about this stuff. How many sons of Solomon are mentioned in the Bible?
3 children.
3 children. Out of 1,000? Out of 1,000 women. Yes. It really is that bad because thing is, he went after every version of Molech. He went after the Sidonian version. He went after the Ammonite version. He went after the Moabite version. All of them are the same. We're going to go out there, and the sacrifice that were happening were their family members. I think it's reasonable to say that a significant percentage of Solomon's children did not live very long. That they were sacrificed to these demon gods. Yeah.
Is the abortion going on, not just in our country, worldwide, a derivative of Molech?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I have a series on the Unholy Trinity on my podcast. I also have one from Exodus. Is that Ashereth, Baal, Ashereth, and Moloch. Now they have different names from different people, but Baal is basically Lucifer. His wife is Ashereth, that's the goddess of sex, debauchery, and war. And then you've got Moloch. Is what do you do when the two get together? You got kids from that. You kill them. That's what was that. That's the unholy. That's.
Live your best life now.
So you can live your best life now. Yeah, that is what we have here in America. Okay, folks, it's both political parties. I know I got in trouble on Sunday by saying that neither party is godly. I will stand by that. Neither party is godly because both parties are serving these same 3 gods. One of them is a little bit more subtle than the other, and that's the only difference. That's what Solomon went after. And so Solomon turned away from God completely. And it's going to have an impact. Rehoboam is left. Now I should say that from that, because of that, at the end of chapter 11, we won't read it, but from the end of that, God raised up adversaries to come up against Solomon. Just like he told Solomon he would do. God is faithful. God is not only faithful for all of the good things that he says, but God is also faithful on the other side. God is faithful when it comes to his judgment. Because heaven and hell are both expressions of God's justice. Heaven is not God's grace, and hell God's justice. They are both expressions of his justice. And so God is going to do to Solomon exactly what he said he would do. And of course, he did. So, I love verse 41. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did, and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? And we'll see there's a whole bunch of books about the acts of people and that. So now from Solomon dies, and his son Rehoboam comes to power. So let's find out what is. Can I get somebody to read chapter 12, verses 1 through 15? Turn this on, see if this actually works. Do we have a.
And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. So it happened when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard it, he was still in Egypt. For he had fled from the presence of King Solomon and had been dwelling in Egypt, that they sent and called him. Then Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the burdensome service of your father and his heavy yoke, which he put on us, and we will serve you. So he said to them, Depart for 3 days, then come back to me. And the people departed. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who stood before his father Solomon while he still lived, and he said, How do you advise me to answer these people? And they spoke to him, saying, If you will be a servant to these people today, and serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. But he rejected the advice of the elders had given him, and consulted the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. And he said to them, What advice do you give? How should we answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Lighten the yoke which your father put on us? Then the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, Thus you should speak to the people who have spoken to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter on us. Thus you shall say to them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist. And now, whereas my father put a heavy yoke on you, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. So Jeroboam and the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, and the king had directed, saying, Come back to me the 3rd day. Then the king answered the people roughly, and rejected the advice from the elders had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from the Lord, that he might fulfill his word, which the Lord had spoken by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat.
Okay, so basically God told Jeroboam you're going to be king. So Rehoboam, perhaps one of the most stupid, foolish men in the history of humanity. But this is pretty normal, right? People come up. Solomon, he raised taxes. Solomon was not super popular. Okay, so Solomon's image is changed quite a bit over the years. But when he was reigning, Solomon was not popular because he made life miserable for the people. Now he could say he's doing this for God, but we know from chapter 11 that no, he wasn't doing things for God. He was doing things for himself. And so Rehoboam, all he's got to do is come alongside and be a populist. And just a populist king and say, okay, I'm going to lighten things up. Yeah.
Solomon didn't stop with the temple.
No.
He got the building bug, and after he did what God told him to do, then he built chariot cities and store cities and this city and that city.
And he was taxing everybody to get it.
And it went to his head.
And he started forcing people to work for him and stuff like that. So all Rehoboam has to do is just turn off the gas. But Rehoboam goes and talks to young men who are stupid, just like he is, and says, you know what, man, you think my dad was bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. And the folks said, you know what, okay, we don't need to follow you. We're not going to do this. And so they followed, after they came after, they followed Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Now, and so at this point now, Judah and Simeon stay together, because Simeon's inside of Judah, and then and he has Benjamin as well. So because Simeon kind of gets usurped by Judah, because it's right smack in the middle of it. So when you think about the 10 tribes go up north, some of the folks from Simeon went up north. He keeps Benjamin and he keeps Judah because, of course, he's from Judah, keeping the line going and that. So Rehoboam is now going to be in the south, and then Jeroboam is now going to be the king in the north. And so Israel has been split, and they will stay split until, effectively, they will stay split until 1948. Because even when they came back under the returns under Joshua, they were still somewhat split. And in Jesus' time, Samaria and all that, they were split. But Jeroboam comes into power. Now, Jeroboam, all Jeroboam has to do, all he's got to do is obey the Lord. God has given him an incredible opportunity to where he can show, because they're still Abraham's descendants, right? So you need to have one from Judah on the throne in Judah. That's happening there. Jeroboam could actually start something up and could bring the folks from the south and actually bring them to God. But what Jeroboam does is Jeroboam decides that, hey, I don't want our people going to Jerusalem to worship God. I don't want them going to the temple. Because in Jeroboam's mind, if they did, they may have allegiance to Judah, and he doesn't want that to happen. And so what he does is he comes up with, wait for it, golden calves. And he comes up with a rival temple, and in Ephraim, and that he or in Shechem, in the hill country of Ephraim, and he builds a temple, if you will, for Yahweh. And what he's going to do is now he's going to have a counterfeit religion of these golden calves. He sets one up in Dan as well. And that he's going to say, okay, now you're going to come here and worship. So now you're going to worship Yahweh here instead of going to Jerusalem. And so he's going to make things easier for them. And the problem is we're going to find that every king from this point on is going to, but the biggest thing that God has against them is that they committed the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. You hear that everywhere with the northern kingdom. And that is because he wants to give them a system that looks like they're serving Yahweh, but not the obedience. And of course we know, what does God say? To obey is better than sacrifice. And that has not changed. So he wants to make it easy for them, and he wants to give them a counterfeit so they don't have to go here. Folks, that actually has been going on in America since for the last 100 years or so. And I would argue since the American Civil War. That you have a system of Christianity that's going alongside here with actual biblical Christianity, and the problem is that those who are here in this system, they really have issues with the folks who are actually serving the Lord. But they want to make it's a counterfeit. We want to have all the trappings of this. We're going to use God, we're going to use all these things, but yet we're not going to actually serve him. It hasn't changed. We still have people committing the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, in America and in the world today. And so because of that, Jeroboam is beginning his reign with a counterfeit that has no power. And the end result of that is going to be idolatry. It is very easy to fall into idolatry, and it's very easy to fall into sin when you are not obeying God. And you get away from him, and you're going to do something else that is easier. Folks, that's why you have churches who are not only accepting of sin, but actually flaunting it and championing the fact that they're okay with sin. Because that's where it goes. And it starts with coming up with a counterfeit to the action, not letting people actually worship God under God's standards or under God's rules. And that's what happens, and that's what happened to the king, to all of the kingdoms of the north. So there's a reason why there are no godly kings in the north, and the reason for that is because all of them have continued with the idea that we can do things our own way. We don't have to do it God's way, and we don't do things God's way. The foundational side, we're going to get further and further away into sin. Yes?
Example, wouldn't it be of the sins of the father hanging down?
Well, that's a part of it, yeah.
And then also, I think when we went over this in the sanctuary, each new king that got appointed started off with, and he was worse off than the last king.
In many ways, yeah. But again, the Bible's very clear on this. The sin that gets them in trouble is they committed the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. When you see that, you're seeing a bad king, which happens to every king in the north.
We also learned that when God picks the king, things go well. When man picks the king, it doesn't go well.
Well, I mean, but God picked Jeroboam. The problem is that Jeroboam, he walked away when it came to the relationship with God. He did it no different than Solomon. Okay, and so I know Solomon is like revered by many people out there, but there's not a whole lot of difference. Yes?
This system lingers even after
Oh, yeah.
Israel gets deported. When Jesus goes and talks to the woman at the well,
Yep.
she says, our fathers tell us that we're supposed to worship here, but you guys say we're supposed to worship in Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah.
So they're still doing it
Yes.
1,000 years later.
Absolutely. Yes, it's a problem. Folks, we're still doing it today. We're a little bit more subtle on it, but we're still doing it today. Yes.
Well, I was saying part of it is because the Assyrians had a little problem after they took everybody out. They had to send some natives back to run this system so that the land wouldn't vomit their people out.
So then, Jeroboam sets on the trajectory for Israel, what's going to ultimately lead to their demise in 722. So God raises up a prophet and says, Jeroboam, you done messed up. You're going down. Your dynasty is not going to last. And then we have a little story here, and I want to take a look at it real quick. I want to take a look at, you got an old prophet who lives in Bethel. He's got sons. He's prophesying. And he comes up to a guy. This guy wants him to come home and eat bread with him. And he says, I can't do that. I may not return with you or go in with you. Neither will I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, you shall neither eat bread nor drink water there, or nor return by the way that you came. And then in verse 18, and the man said to him, I also am a prophet, as you are. We're in chapter 13, verse 18. He said to them, I am also a prophet, as you are. And an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you into your house, that he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied to him, and so he went back with him, and he ate bread at his house, and he drank water. Now he's going to end up being lion food. Okay, but I wanted to notice what happens here. This guy is a prophet. Somebody else wants him to do something and walk away from the Lord and disobey God. And what does he say? I'm also a prophet. I'm also a prophet. And God told me it's okay. This pattern is amazing. I've had that more since I've been here. I've never had this as much as I've had when I was here, and it's really amazing. I would have somebody tell me, and I've more than once, God wants me to do this during the service. I said, no, he doesn't. Well, God told me that he wanted me. I said, no, he didn't. I said, well, why not? I said, God's not going to tell you anything he doesn't tell me, because it's my responsibility here. So I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. I had one time somebody actually did it anyway. And I had to tell them, I said, you ever do that again, I will throw you out of here so fast, it'll take days for your rear end to catch up with you. It ain't going to happen. And but the point is that what God told me. Well, no, God didn't tell this guy. He lied to get this guy to act independently. Because what is sin? Deciding for ourselves what's right and wrong. And that's what the enemy wants to do. And he'll get people out there who will say, hey, I'm a prophet, Joel Osteen and others. And God has given me this word or whatever, that God is still speaking on others, that somehow God changed his mind on sexuality and things like that. No, he didn't. Anybody who says that is not from God. And that's why John says in 1 John chapter 4, he says, test the spirits. Because not every prophet, not everybody who speaks is speaking from God. If it tells you to do something that against what God has already told you to do, it's not a prophet of God. That's a very clear thing. Because God is not going to tell this prophet by another prophet to do something that counteracts and contradicts what he already told him to do. And so here we have this problem going on. We've got Rehoboam, who's beyond stupid. We've got Jeroboam, who's just living in absolute defiance. And now we have these prophets out there saying that, hey, willy-nilly, I can do whatever I want. What can possibly go wrong? And so we have in 14, Jeroboam's going down. And now we're going to have this series of kings that are going to happen. So we've got Rehoboam is reigning in Judah. He's there. We've got Abijam, who reigns in Judah. We've got Abijam. This is in chapter 15. Abijam began to reign over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, and the daughter of Abishalom. And he walked in all the sins that his father did before him, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord. So basically, he's continuing his father's way. He is not a righteous man. That he is going to, and he's going down. Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. And Asa, his son, reigned in his place. Now, Asa, who's going to take us up to pretty much the end of the book of 1 Kings, on Judah's side, is he's actually a righteous guy. With one exception. We're going to find something that happens here in, can I get somebody to read verses 9 to 15?
Which chapter?
Chapter 15. I'm sorry, we're flying. Yeah.
9 to 15?
Uh-huh.
In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah, and he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name, Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom, and Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David, his father, had done. He put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. He also removed Maacah, his mother, from the reign of being queen mother, because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. And Asa cut down her image and burned it at the brook Kidron. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true to the Lord all his days. And he brought into the house of the Lord the sacred gifts of his father, and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels.
Okay, we have an issue here. Asa comes into power. He is a godly man in many ways. He did what was right. And notice what he's getting rid of. I mean, and we're talking 2 generations here. The cult prostitutes, the male cult prostitutes, okay? So we got, gets them out of the land, gets rid of the idols that his father had made. He gets rid of Maacah, who is serving the abominable image of Asherah, the goddess of sex and war. And so he's doing things, but there's a problem. He did not get rid of the high places. I think that we're going to see this many times with kings of Judah. In fact, I think there's only 2 kings that actually get rid of the high places. My favorite, of course, is Josiah, who not only got rid of them, he desecrated the suckers. That he like nuked them. That these righteous kings, I am convinced, are a prototype of so many pastors in conservative churches today, who are righteous men, who are preaching the word, who are putting away the sin, doing all this stuff. But the problem is they're not getting rid of the high places. Now, what were the high places in Israel, in Judah? Yes.
These were the places that were set up by Solomon to worship other gods.
Yes.
And they were set up as an alternative place to worship Yahweh.
Which is when they put them together, that's actually what they did. They would actually, so I would argue that Asa probably did this, I think the other kings as well, that they would turn them into places where we can worship Yahweh. In other words, they were places of convenience. Rather than going to Jerusalem like the law says I need to do for these holy days, right? For Passover and so on. No, I'll just go to the high place. I'll just go where it's close, where it's convenient. Yes.
The book that is the Archaeological Study Bible shows some pictures of one of these
Yes.
places that's been uncovered. They have all the furniture
Uh-huh.
of the temple
Yes.
in a building in miniature.
Oh yeah.
It's insane. They actually copied the temple in miniature.
Sure. But what happened? It came down to convenience. That no, we don't have to completely obey God. What we'll do is we'll come up with something that is similar, something that's like it. So in other words, we'll become temple light. And so, or we'll become world light, if you will. Okay? Yes, exactly. We're going to make things easy for people to go. And I think that what happened is the fact that because when you take down the high places, you're telling people you can't do it the easy way. You actually have to, wait for it, obey God and do what he wants you to do, because God is not overly concerned. I'm not comfortable with this. God does not have Dan Earhart's comfort at the top of his list of things that he needs to keep in mind. No, God has his program in place. He has his plan in place. And so I think what's happened here is that these kings, and again, it says he's a righteous guy. I'm not arguing that. But what I am saying is that they still allowed this syncretism, this easy believism, this easy worship, whatever you want to call it, to have to take place so that people don't actually have to obey God. Yeah.
You said it was out of convenience. It's called high places.
Uh-huh.
Are they still worshiping God, but on these places that were not in Jerusalem?
When you had godly kings, they would worship Yahweh. Are they actually worshiping Yahweh on the high places? No, they're not. Why is that? Because they're doing it in sin. Okay, it would be the same thing if you're looking at. This will get me in trouble online, but I'm gonna say it anyway. That if you're looking at a church who has a female senior pastor, that church is living in sin. There's no two ways about it.
What I was trying to understand, the connection was, if God wanted them to go to Jerusalem and then said, but we're going to do it here.
Yeah.
We're going to do our worship here.
Yes.
We're going to worship here. And I was trying to bring that to a time frame like today. Is that worshiping online? Is that the same thing?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I was talking to a Jim. He asked about the online thing. I said, if our online service, if our live stream ever reached 100 people, I'd shut it down. Because the live stream is for people like Brad and Jane, who are in Florida, who want to stay connected. When my sister was home and she couldn't go out to church, she caught the live stream. So my goal is to have 8, 10, 15, whatever people who have a reason to be there. But if I have folks who are going to say, I'm going to Netflix and chill, and I'm going to do the live stream in church and all that kind of stuff, no, I would actually shut it down. Because, yeah, that would be a problem. So, because at that point, you could turn it into a high place. I'm not saying it is, but you could become one, yeah.
The issue is they're using this place to do the system
Yes.
without making the commitment to hike all the way to Jerusalem because they love God.
Okay. Because if we remember from Deuteronomy chapter 6, what did God say? If you pass on a system without passing on a passion, you're going to end up in sin. If you have to, so the whole point is pass on a passion for God, because the system is here to facilitate the passion, not the other way around. Yeah.
And that's what makes Netflix and chill church a problem.
Exactly.
Because I don't have to make the commitment to get my butt up, get in my clothes, get in the car, go to the church, be with the actual people.
Yes. Absolutely. Which is, again, in 2020, what happened here? The government shut the church down, and the church, because they didn't have the guts to stand up there and say, we're going to do what God wants us to do, the church stayed shut down for over a year. And we're going to worship at the high places. And we have churches who are actually making those paper cutouts of people and putting them in the pews. And I'm dead serious. Yeah, I know of two churches who have done that. And I was talking to their pastors, and they were really proud of that. I said, "So you're really proud of disobeying God?" And of course, I hated grandma because we didn't close. I mean, but the point was that they did that. The enemy did that. He set up a whole bunch of high places. He did it for a year. And all the time, I mean, folks, I cannot tell you the pressure that I went through from our denomination to set up the high places, and I refused to do it. It was incredible. I was told I hated grandma, I wanted everyone to die, everything else. It's insane. But that's exactly what's happening. It's come up with this, because if we're not here interacting, we're not doing what God has called us to do, we're not having iron sharpen iron, all these kind of problems, and this is what we end up with. So,
A year and a half later, I read an article coming out of an Episcopal Church newsletter that said, giving's down. Why?
Yeah.
People have suddenly realized they don't have to be here because it's not important, because we told them it wasn't.
oh, I hear this all the time. In fact, I don't go to many of the ministerial things out here, because just about every church not all, but most churches that closed down during COVID have not come back. And they're all like complaining about how horrible things are. And they asked me, I said, well, we're growing. God's doing great things. And I mean, every year we've got new giving and stuff like that. God's bringing incredible people in. And then they're like, what did you do? I said, do you really want to know? They said, yeah. I said, we didn't close. And since then, God has blessed our socks off. It's been insane. I think there's a thing in it. So what we have, just a second here, I'm running out of time, Brent, but so I'm going to get there. But I want us to see when we get here, we've got two issues, one in the north, one in the south. Okay, in the north, we have just out and out disobedience and rebellion. That is Jeroboam. Now, how you know the north and the south, Rehoboam is the real king. So that's how I learned it. If you want to know Rehoboam, Jeroboam, who's in the south, who's in the north, Rehoboam's the real king, so he's in the south. So Jeroboam is doing absolute rebellion against God. However, Asa, who's even this godly king, he's doing compromise. He's tolerating. He is tolerating the compromise. He's tolerating the easy thing to where people don't have to make. We got problems on both sides. So we know that there's going to be issues. So that's why, because of the rebellion, you're going to see them go faster into sin and slavery. But the problem in the South is which is again the reason why we have, there's only a handful of righteous kings in the South, and there's only one set that actually has a group in a row. So a lot of times you'll have, so from Hezekiah we get Manasseh, who was an absolutely disgusting individual. And then but from him we get Josiah. So I mean, they come and go. So I'm sorry, Brent, yeah?
No, that's okay. You kind of said what I was going to say, which was listening to WIHS, they confirmed exactly what you had said, which was they noticed that there was a trend with the churches that closed during COVID, that their attendance was down now and had a hard time getting people to come back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because, again, why should I? That because we have we put on slick performance and so on. So now, as we finish up the rest of the book here, now we have Elijah the prophet. Now, why Elijah's in 1 Kings? I think I'm thinking about that. Why would God put him there? In Dan's world, I would put him in 2 Kings with Elisha. But what we have is these godless kings in the north, and I mean there were regime changes and stuff like that. I'm not looking at that in the overall picture. But we end up with Ahab. Ahab marries Jezebel, and she is not many people named Jezebel today. And so, because she was an absolutely evil person. And so he is, Jezebel is from Sidon. And so she is a follower of Baal. Baal is basically Lucifer. Baal is the king of the gods, and the story behind him is he actually rebelled against the Creator and won. He took some of the minor gods, went up against them, I would argue a third of them, and went up against the Creator and beat him. So Baal is the replacement for Yahweh. So we have... The fight is not between Ahab and Elijah. The issue is Baal versus Yahweh. Ahab and Jezebel, they are the human representatives of Baal, Lucifer, and Elijah is the human representative for Yahweh. So when we take a look at the story here, now there's some really cool miracles happen and so on, but when it comes down to it is this. The biggest part that comes out is Elijah goes to Ahab and says, it ain't going to rain until I say so. Now, Baal, as the king of the gods, is in charge of the weather. He is he is climate change. That he is the one that he's the storm god. He is the one in control. So when Elijah says to Ahab, there ain't going to be no rain, what he's saying is, it's on, and I am going to show you that Baal is without. That what you are serving, what you are following, is nowhere close to who Yahweh is. That's what's going on. So all of the other miracles that take place on that come about because of it. But when it comes down to it is, Elijah's saying it's not going to rain because your God's supposed to be the one who brings about the rain, and I'm telling you it ain't going to happen. And so he keeps the widow of, the son alive, stuff like that. The oil's out because there's a drought. There's a famine in the land when there's no rain. There's a problem. We got a dust bowl happening at this point. And all the time, they're going to Baal, and they're saying, you are the storm god, we need some storms, and they have to come out there and say, he can't do it. Yes?
I think the issue that the reason Elijah is here is because when Ahab comes to power, the pretense of serving Yahweh is gone.
Oh yeah, and I get why it's here. It's because it's the ending of the stuff here, and then Elisha starts in 2 Kings, which makes absolute sense to me because of other stuff that's happening. But it's coming down to it is, remember, God told them, if you will serve me, life is going to go well for you. If you don't, it's going to be a problem. And I think that Ahab is the poster child for the kingdom of the world. And God says, okay, I'm going to take you down. And I'm going to take Baal down. This is an opportunity for the people to come on board with who God is. Because remember, you can't be a person in Israel and say the government is lost and therefore I can do whatever I want because the government says this is what I have to do. That ain't going to work. It didn't work in the late 1940s in Germany, and it ain't going to work before the great white throne judgment of God either. The government was bad. I was doing what I was told, and that ain't going to work. And so God is raising up Elijah to show them that even though the government is gone, even though Ahab is gone, and these people are out there, Yahweh is still the one true God. So I think that this is happening for the people to understand, because they're going to have to stand before the Lord and give an account. And they can't say, I just followed instructions. And we'll see that. I'm going to make that argument with all of the with all the prophets, actually, that God, the only prophet that actually went to the kings, that actually specifically went to kings, would be Isaiah and Jeremiah. But Jeremiah was still heard by all the people. But you get the other ones that are Haggai and the others. They were dealing with the people to let them see who God is. Because God already knew that the government's gone, especially those who are ministering to the kings in the north. So, real quick.
Well, and Isaiah and Jeremiah have a definitely different ministry, because they're trying to reel the kings of Judah back in. They're not so much speaking to the people.
Yeah, exactly. But they're the only two that the other minor prophets. I mean, pretty much they're going to the people. Amos and the others are going to the people. But so here we are back with Elijah says it ain't going to rain until I say so. So then Ahab's got a problem. Ahab can't kill Elijah, because if Elijah's dead, what can he not do?
Say that it's going to rain.
Say it's going to rain again. Exactly. And here's the thing. And I've said this many, many times, because I absolutely believe it. I believe it even to this day. Okay? Those who are in the kingdom of the world have more respect for the one true God than the people who serve the one true God. And that's what is so frustrating. That's the reason why they fight so hard, because they know they have to fight that hard to defeat him. And while God's people are going, okay, just don't be mean to me. Let me say Merry Christmas and give me a seat at the table. And that's all we want. And so Elijah knows this. So he goes out there, and finally, we all know the story, right? Says, okay, we're going to have it out right now. You get your guys. I'll talk to God. They get up there, they meet on Mount Carmel. So you guys can go first. Whichever one your storm got out here, I'm going to give you a home field advantage. We're going to be out here on up on Mount Carmel, which is a high place for you. Shouldn't be that far for you. Easier move than going down to the valley. So you guys go first. Whichever God takes this offering by fire. And so the people are going, hey, this is right up Baal's alley. Baal should win this. And they're going. And Elijah, I love Elijah at this. Yes, you talk about sarcasm. I love it. He can't hear you. I love it. Maybe he's in the celestial outhouse. Maybe he's reading some. Maybe he's scrolling through his phone or something. He's on Instagram. Yeah. So perhaps he's on Instagram or something. He can't hear it, and they're cutting themselves. They're doing all this kind of stuff, and there ain't nothing happening. Because the thing is that now, folks, I am not arguing that Baal does not have power. Lucifer has power. The problem is God has more, and so no matter what Baal wants to do or whatever Lucifer wants to do, then God is saying no.
And he has to obey.
He has no choice. He has no choice, which I know irritates him. And then Elijah goes out, soaks it all down. God brings it down. God takes the offering. He takes the water. He takes the wood. He even takes. Can't say what's coming out of my mouth here. He takes the stupid altar as well. He takes it all. There ain't nothing left. This is like Hiroshima here on a smaller scale. He just takes the whole thing. I'm waiting for a mushroom cloud to go out. And then Jeremiah said, I said it. That you got me started on that. So then Elijah says, kill them all. Kill them all. Because we have seen who the one true God is. And then I love the thing there. He says, okay, it's going to be rain. Now I said there's going to be rain. I'm going to rub Baal's nose in it. Not only did I beat him here, but now I'm going to say that there's going to be rain. He starts praying. Yes, guys, any clouds? Nope. Pray some more. Any more clouds? Nope. Any clouds? Yeah, there's a little bitty cirrus cloud coming up. He says, gird your loins, run out there, the rain's coming. And it came down, and he beats Ahab back into the city. And the thing is that Elijah is showing us and he's not showing us, he's showing the people of Israel. Because remember, it's still, God doesn't desire that anyone should perish, but that everybody would come to repentance. They have the opportunity. They can go to the temple. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. That's true in the north as well as the south. They have the opportunity to do that, and God is showing them through Elijah who the one true God is. This is an incredible opportunity. They don't take it. At least the leadership doesn't. I have to believe, because I'm an optimist, that I have to believe that there was a righteous remnant in Israel who heard this and they were serving God. They were probably doing it on the down low. So yeah, we're almost out of time, but yeah.
Chronicles actually shows us
Yes.
that, because as you go through it talks about the people that trickle south. There was Levites that came south,
Yes.
and others that came south. And when the census is taken, when they come back,
Yeah.
there's somebody from every tribe but Dan.
Yep. Because we're kind of dumb, but anyway. One last thing here. One last thing before we're done here. We're going to be done a little bit late. Sorry about that. Is that, because I think that there's a principle that happens here, something we have to watch out for. Elijah just won an incredible victory. Yahweh just shown himself out to be more powerful, and then he just killed a whole bunch of prophets of Baal. Ahab is running with his tail between his legs. Jezebel gets mad, wants to kill him, and what does he do? He runs away. And I think what's happening, I think what this is showing us is that, and then he starts feeling sorry for himself, woe is me. And God's like, seriously, dude. He says, I'm the only one left. Nobody else is here. God says, just dude. I got a bunch of guys that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. I'm always going to keep that remnant there. But I think what it tells us is this. I think it's a very real thing, is that once the adrenaline is gone, we can be vulnerable. And sometimes we are at our most vulnerable after a great victory. And I think that, and we've seen that throughout the history of the church, through the history of God's people. That and I love it when Elijah goes to God, God doesn't yell at him. God just says, I got one more thing for you to do, and then I'll bring you home. And so, because God's working with him, and Elijah's been through a lot. I mean, you can't imagine the stress that this guy's going through. I mean, you got people who are angry with him because they're dying because of the drought. He's hearing about that. And he's the one responsible for it. He's waiting for God. He's under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure. He wins a great big battle, and he turns away, and he runs. And I don't want us to look down on him too much, because I think it's just a part of human nature. And what this shows us is that as God is working through people, is that they're still people. That gives me hope that we have that we do have this, this up and down sometimes in our life, and that's okay. That we need to make sure that we continue to keep our eyes on the Lord, and that He will see us through. And I can remember that. I think it was no secret that I went to Indiana kicking and screaming. I went there out of obedience. I stayed there out of obedience. And I remember once I said, okay, Lord, I'm willing to retire out of here. He says, now you can leave. And he brought me here, which is a wonderful place. I tell people God brought me here because he loves me. And but the thing is that happens. That pastors get burnt out. That it's very important for churches to keep an eye on them. Give them the time off that they need, especially solo pastors. They get very tired. And when that happens, that's when Satan can come in. And so very, very important. So if you're watching this, keep an eye on your pastor. That because, we see that with Elijah. So that's how we end 1 Kings. So any thoughts or comments? And yes, I know I probably missed 98% of what's in there, but we only have 1 week. Yes.
It's consistent with God's character and what we saw with regards to
Yes.
how, the rain, no rain, taking down the other gods or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
have you. Because it really reminded me of the same thing happening with the pantheon of gods in Egypt,
Oh, yeah.
and how he did the exact same thing there.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we've had that here. We had global, when I was young, we had global cooling. It was going to kill everybody. Then God turned up the heat, and then we had global warming, and now we have, and then every time Al Gore went someplace, nobody in Florida wanted him there, because every time he went someplace, it froze. And so of course now we have climate change. It's the same thing. I mean, whenever people say that we're more powerful than God, and God says, "Okay, I'll show you who's more powerful." That's what He does. So that is First Kings, and that is setting the stage for what we're going to see in Second Kings. We're going to see some righteous kings in Judah. And I'm going to highlight the ones that I think are really amazing, because I'm the teacher. I can do that. And then when it comes to the kings of the north, I mean, there's just bad, badder, and baddest. That's kind of how it breaks down. Is that, but all of them bring them into the sin that comes about is Baal, Asherah, and Molech. Replace God with Lucifer. Bring in sexual immorality. Take care of what comes out of that by killing the kids. That's what we're going to see as the commonality of what happens when they get away from God. That hasn't changed. So that, Mike, I guess on that happy note, can I get somebody to close us in prayer? Thanks.
Thank you, God, that above all things that have been created, you give us the privilege to be created in your image. God, that we can find the hope and the trust that's in your word. And we ask and pray that as we continue to trust you with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding, that you would make our path straight. May we not be invested in a process, but in the passion of knowing who you are, and be willing to pass the hope that lives within us to those that are around us. We thank you for Dan. We thank you for Jane. We thank you for this church and the time that was spent here tonight looking at your word. We pray that we would not forget it, but that we would pass it on. In Jesus' name.
Amen. And Bible Vibes 1910, we're glad you're here. We meet at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays. We're not meeting next Tuesday, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. So you can find us here. Just subscribe to the channel and you can catch us. So we're glad you were here with us.